Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So, we are going to be talking a little bit about the recent polling data that we've gotten today in this video because it looks very, very good for Donald Trump. We'll be touching on the Pennsylvania primary as well towards the end of the video. But we have several polls that have come out recently and Donald Trump is surging. We heard about the Biden surge for quite some time, but well, doesn't seem to be the case. Recent economic data is potentially pushing this, but also you have chaos abroad. The immigration thing is still a major issue. And possibly, like I said, when Donald Trump, even if he's not in the campaign trail, he's getting free media coverage because of the trial, and Biden's tripping over himself on the campaign trail, which he was not really on last election cycle, and Donald Trump is gaining. He has gained in most of these states in the recent poll out of Bloomberg. In all the states combined, he went up by 6. He's up by 7 in Arizona. 7, and that's after the abortion thing. He's up by 7. Georgia, he's up by 6. Some reason he went down in Michigan, but he went up in Nevada. He's up by 8 now. He's up by 10 points in North Carolina. He's up by 1 in Pennsylvania, which the last poll did not have him leading, and he was down in Wisconsin in the last poll. Now he's up by 4. So that is absolutely huge. That would give Donald Trump, close to 300 electoral votes if that's true. And it's very unlikely that if he's winning Wisconsin by 4 that he'd be down in Michigan. Who knows why that poll gave that result. But still, throw it in the aggregate. It's fine. Looking at the aggregate, Donald Trump still leads nationally. And you look at some of these other states, Arizona, he's up by 5. That's huge, and that's with some post-abortion polls in the state. When they had the ban go into effect, now they're going to repeal the ban. May not be as big of an issue. Then in Georgia, he leads by 4. Michigan, he leads by 3. Nice round numbers on all 3 of these states. Then we got 4.8-point leads in Nevada and North Carolina. It's like, yeah, I know that polls can overestimate Republicans in Nevada, but if he's really up by 8, I don't think he's losing Nevada. I don't think he likely loses Wisconsin if the polls have him up by 2. We could say these states are going to be close, and maybe the polls in some places might overestimate Trump by a couple of points. Never happened before in a place like Michigan, but if it happens, he still is the favorite overall. As of right now, Biden's approval rating went below 40% again, and it's just not looking good. So when you want to put all of the results on the map here based off of what we anticipate to happen, you could see, I think all of these states at this point are going to be going in Trump's column. This is the 2016 or 2020 map, I should say, right here. I think he adds Georgia. He's at or above 50% in most polls in Georgia in the aggregate. You can look at this here. 49.7, taking third parties into account, he's likely going to beat Biden with that margin. So 251, give him Arizona. Polls have him up by 4. Give him Nevada. He's at 268. That's why the Rust Belt is crucial. That's why he needs one of those states to win the election. He needs Wisconsin. I think he gets Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So far, I think Trump is still the narrow favorite in those states. Polls in Pennsylvania, we see one outlier pollster basically carrying Biden, but Trump is up by like 3 points in the aggregate in the 3-way race or the 5-way race with the third-party candidates involved. So you look at that and it's like, yeah, Trump is in a good position. And the primary, if anything, confirmed that last night. So many people are freaking out about it. We'll talk about why they really shouldn't be reading into it a whole lot. But you look at the latest poll out of Quinnipiac. This is Quinnipiac. This is the left-wing. Rasmussen has really overestimated Democrats. I believe it had Biden winning like Iowa and Ohio in their final polls in 2020. And Donald Trump won both by over 8. Now, this pollster that had Trump down by like 4 or 5 points back in January is tied. This pollster is tied, and some of the crosstabs are looking more like crosstabs that you would expect, like Trump winning the white vote by a decent margin, probably wins it by more than that. He's still up in the Hispanic vote, but the black vote share, 18%, that's probably more in line with reality than some of the polls that have him winning like 25, 30% of it. But still, you look at it, he's in a very good position. It's a dead heat in a very far left-leaning pollster. That's not a good sign for Joe Biden, and that's the popular vote. I mean, we know that Donald Trump, so long as he keeps the popular vote under like 3, he probably wins in the Electoral College. And that's what a lot of pollsters are showing right now. Like, yeah, the margin that he needs isn't going to be like, oh, he can lose the popular vote by 4 or 5 and win, just because it's likely that big states like New York, California, Florida, Illinois, Texas, they're going to move right. But still, the fact that Biden is losing the election in his most favorable pollster, that's not good news for him. It's really not. If they lose Quinnipiac, he's in serious trouble, and he's been spending all this money. He's been on the campaign trail. Trump's been 4 times indicted. He's literally on trial. He can't even campaign, but things are so bad that Trump is neck and neck with Biden in a far left pollster in terms of their track record. That is insane. And then you look at Pew Research, Biden's approval rating, 35%. Donald Trump with a lead in Pew. Again, crosstabs that make sense for the most part, and that's looking good. Altogether, Donald Trump leading voters who didn't vote in 2020, Biden losing more 2020 support than Trump's losing, white working class voters backing Trump by a heavy margin. Like, these are crosstabs that I fully could see being the exit polling data, and it's not good for Biden because it's likely, yeah, Trump's going to gain with Hispanics. Biden's going to lose a bit with blacks. Even if Trump doesn't get 18%, even if he gets like 12, turnout dipping, that's everything because Georgia's out the window. Pennsylvania and Michigan get harder for Biden. Wisconsin, technically, to a lesser extent, does as well. And he's not exactly doing so hot. He's not. And if Donald Trump goes out there, sweeps the board in these states, he needs just one state that can get him there. Wisconsin gets him there. You'd think that'd be the easiest of the 3, although polling data and possibly things like the auto industry and Biden struggling among Muslim voters, maybe that could help Trump in Michigan, get him over the hump. We'll see. But either way, Trump's the favorite 6 months out, and it doesn't seem like a lot is really changing to really change that. Now, you could say that we still are in for a dogfight. I agree. It's not going to be easy. I mean, we can't pretend like we're up by, 5 points in every state because we know that these things could go wrong. I mean, we've seen polling in the past. We saw polling errors in 2022. We still got to chase our ballots, get people out and voting, or it's all for nothing. But still, you'd rather be Trump than Biden right now, which is insane given the fact that Trump is on criminal trial. Obviously, it's bogus. We know it. But still, Biden, the reason why they're trying to drag Trump down into this stuff is because they have nothing that they could really beat him on. And even an issue like abortion, which Biden has really emphasized and done ad blitzes about, it hasn't moved the needle. And Trump gained in a place like Arizona, where Democrats are really trying to make it front and center. And that is huge. So we have to talk about Pennsylvania because that's the crucial state. Because let's say Trump doesn't win Arizona, Nevada, or Michigan, but he gets Georgia, his 2020 states, Pennsylvania gets him to 270. Nothing else matters in terms of his ability to go out there and win. And there was the primary last night in Pennsylvania. Now, Donald Trump got 83.4% of the vote. I said he probably would get around 82, 83%. He got 92, 93% in 2020. Donald Trump in 2020 had 0 viable challengers from the get-go, for one, and on top of that, he was an incumbent president. Joe Biden is the incumbent president right now, and he got 88.2% when you factor in write-ins. That's not good for a closed primary in Pennsylvania. It's really not. Now, it is true Biden got more votes than Trump, but there's more registered Democrats in Pennsylvania than registered Republicans. And you want to go all the way back to the 2020 election and the 2020 primary in Pennsylvania. Democrats led Republicans by over 450,000 votes cast. Now you look at the difference between the two, it's necessarily just shrunk to nothing. I mean, you look at this, so far you add up all the votes, it's like a 50,000, 60,000 vote differential between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, or the Republicans as a whole. So you see that there. That's not really good news for Democrats because they've seen a massive drop-off. And while people want to talk about what about the Haley voters or whatever, we could talk about that. But still, in terms of a non-incumbent running for president, even if the opponents have dropped out, Donald Trump I believe he's the first one in history to crack 80%. Joe Biden back in 2020 in Pennsylvania, he got 78, 79% of the vote. Trump is getting 83.4. And keep in mind that already when Trump was an incumbent, you saw 7, 8% of the vote in Pennsylvania go against him. He was getting in the 80s in these collar counties, and, he lost probably about 5 to 10% support across the board. But that doesn't really mean much. You do have people still on the fence, maybe people who are questioning Trump's ability to win, things like that. On top of that could have contributed to that. Also, if he was just running up against a dropped out Bill Weld this time, he likely would have gone out there and gotten, I guess you could say, 95% of the vote. Instead of running against somebody like Haley, even though she dropped out, she did spend quite a bit of money on the state before she did, and Trump didn't really spend anything at all. So that probably can explain why Haley got some of these zombie voters, but the zombie vote's not even historically high in this primary for people to really make that big of a deal out of it when there's really no reason to. A lot of these voters either are ancestral Republicans who voted for Biden in 2020, which is probably like the 7 to 8% of that who, I guess you would say, voted against Trump in the 2020 primary. But I think the other half, maybe they just are not fully on board yet. They have questions. Is Trump electable? This, that, and the other thing. Who knows why they voted the way they did? But it doesn't necessarily mean that all of those voters are, they voted for Trump in 2020. They're defecting. They're going to vote for Biden. He's got a big problem. No, Trump did very well, especially the fact that you look at Pennsylvania, a lot of his base is lower propensity, and they're registered independents, and they can't vote in this primary. And you look at the Democrats, you think Biden is really in that good of a position? He's a sitting president. He got 5% less than what Donald Trump got in the 2020 primary. To sit here and overanalyze it doesn't necessarily seem like it's that big of a deal, because Donald Trump in 2020, he got 15% more of a percent of the vote that Biden got then. Now he's getting less than 5% of a gap, and Joe Biden is literally the incumbent president. So you're looking at that, and it's not exactly fully the best look for Biden altogether. I don't think you can analyze this more than just looking at this and seeing the fact that Democrat enthusiasm and turnout dropped off from 2020 more so than the Republicans have, which is basically true across the board in a lot of these states. And B, it's important to note that it's going to be a close state regardless. I think that that's what it tells you. The fact that he's getting a historically high number of support in a primary, regardless if his opponent dropped off or not, doesn't really tell us very much at all. And Pennsylvania is a state that will be competitive. Biden's lost support. It does seem like Donald Trump's base is relatively intact as well. But in general, for people to overanalyze a primary that was basically a done deal doesn't really tell us a whole lot either way. But it does show that I personally think that Trump's margin is probably better for him being a non-incumbent than Biden's margin is for him being an incumbent, especially when you have 5% of the electorate just writing in somebody else. And that's important to take note of. And also a good portion of these Dean Phillips voters, they're in rural Pennsylvania, ancestral Democrats. What does that tell you? A lot of those voters probably end up voting for Trump. A good portion of the Haley voters are going to vote for Trump. It doesn't tell us anything that's really all that big of a deal for Donald Trump. It just shows us that Pennsylvania, it's going to be a close election. It's going to be a dogfight. I've said that ever since 2021, that this will be ground zero for 2024. I think Trump is probably favored in it. This is what the polling shows. It's what registration data shows. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be a close state. I do think that Trump can win without it. And technically the polls show that he's winning without it. But we'll see. But the people that say, it's over for Trump, these are people who are actively rooting for Donald Trump's demise in many cases. The second the early vote came in, the mail-in vote, where Haley was like cracking 30% in a blue area, they were like, it's over for Trump, it's over for Trump. And then they were real quiet and the goalposts keep moving. But he could get 92% of the vote, and they would still say he underperformed, so it doesn't exactly matter. It's also important to note that because this primary was basically over and you didn't really have many competitive primaries down ballot, especially on the Republican side, and the one place you did, you kind of saw Donald Trump do very, very well compared to the rest of the state even. But it's important to note that Democrats are more likely to vote by mail, and when it comes down to an election that literally doesn't matter because it's already decided, and you see a lot of Democrats anyways just getting their ballots by mail, Republicans voting on election day, it kind of makes sense why Democrat turnout would be higher to begin with in a race like this. So there's that, but still, either way, it doesn't matter. Trump did just fine. He met expectations in Pennsylvania. I think Biden, if anything, underperformed them, and Democrat turnout dropping more than Republican turnout dropping, that's a warning sign. They can cope about this all they want. Doesn't change that, and doesn't change the fact Trump set a record for a non-incumbent with this percentage in the state of Pennsylvania on either side. So, anyways, guys, it's looking good for Donald Trump. We got to keep fighting, though. Put this thing away in November. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. Like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.